So this is the presentation. Let's burst our bubble, right? So let me start with a question first. Why does everyone despise software estimates? Is it because it creates much friction between the developers, project managers, and the clients? Is it because it's hard to do? Is it because people get it wrong sometimes or often? Is it because it makes it easy to blame each other in a project, right? And even when we do it, how do we do it in a project? Do we do a big estimate up front and then stick to it? We play estimation poker during the project? Do we use spreadsheets to do it? Or is it more of a story point situation, right? And should we abandon it altogether, like the no estimates movement advises? I think we need to frame the problem first, and by doing so it means that we need to start with our own point of view. This is Odysseus, the hero of Odyssey and Iliad, right? And the story goes that he asked his crewmates to tie him to a mast so he could go through the siren song that lured away the sailors. And in a client project, people like us who are working on those projects, we feel that we are Odysseus, right? And the sirens are the client's team, right? Luring us away from doing the project with all the needs they have all the time, right? But we need to frame who we actually are. We are the people rowing the boat. And this guy is the hero. The client is the hero. These things, the sirens, are the uncertainties and risks he faces during the course of the project, because the project is his, first and foremost. So by framing ourselves as the enablers, that our job is to make the clients reach their destinations uneventfully, we gain few things. Otherwise, we cloud our judgment. And when our judgment is clouded, it means that we are out of context and perhaps out of place. That inhibits us from managing uncertainty and risk when it comes up effectively. And finally, it keeps us from becoming agents of change for our customers. So let me start this presentation by giving you a small introduction as of who am I and who is Jacala, the company I work for, how to get context and relevance in a project, how to manage risk and uncertainty effectively during the project, and how to become an agent of change at the end. So who am I? I'm Digital Solutions Director at Jacala. I have been working in digital and tech space for a long, long time. I mostly have been involved with complex digital solutions across the EMEA region, North America, and Asia Pacific. And an interesting fact about me is that I have a PhD on AI, but that was a very long time ago when AI was not sexy and we were in basements without windows. So it's quite different to today. When I say I have PhD on AI, everybody's like, really? Anyway, this is Jacala. We are a global company with local presence. We are everywhere in the world. We can serve clients in any geography, basically. We have 500 million revenues. We have 20 plus offices, 900 clients, and active projects in more than 30 countries. We're big Drupal proponents. We used to be called FFW before the rebranding. Some people might have heard of us. But we are very proud with our Drupal heritage, and that continues. So let's take a breath, and let's start first with the context and relevance. What's really important to distinguish in projects, in client work, is that there are two mindsets. One is the project-centric mindset, which is essentially has a beginning and an end, a budget, right, that needs to be set, a timeline that needs to be set, strict milestones, and people are judged upon how well those things are achieved. And on the other hand, you have the product mindset. This is a continuous product. It has a life cycle. It has a budget. It has functionality that needs to achieve, but not on a specific point in time, but as a set of capabilities that are available to the business that is using. This is a lot of people in Drupal work. They are working with platforms. They are enabling platforms internally at organizations that they manage fleet of websites. When we are talking about platforms, it is a product-centric approach. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the organization have a product-based mindset. So where's this need coming from? This needs come from digital transformation. Businesses, they are looking for digital as a way to differentiate themselves, either create capabilities that will give them a competitive advantage within the markets they operate, or they are looking to repackage some of the internal stuff into new capabilities that they can give them access to new markets. Essentially growth through the digital channels and through the platforms that then we create for them. So this need to transform organizations through digital creates the needs for digital products, needs digital services, digital platforms, and digital projects. However, product centricity is very hard. And there are many organizations that they are still struggling with this transition. And sometimes we may, because agile delivery has a lot of characteristics of product centricity, but it's not the same. Agile is a method of delivering work, right? Project centricity has other aspects in it that agile is lacking. It has governance, reporting structures, and budgeting, right? Things that when we do Scrum, we don't really care about, right? Or we should we care? Should we not? And that is a friction point where the estimate essentially becomes problematic when we're talking to our clients. I have a little bit here side by side what is a project characteristic and a product characteristic on the same domain. So on one hand, you have on a project you have funding for the life cycle of a project. So that's based on resources and time. And then on the other hand, you have funding for the life of a product that is based on the business need. If a business need still exists and the product solves that, the product is not retired. It remains. On a project, work stops at a fixed date. On a product, work stops when the product, on a product mindset, the work stops when the product is retired. On a project, change is, we are very hard trying to avoid change. We need to follow the plan set. Whereas on a product, we want to welcome change. We need to enable more capabilities in a business. On a project, we focus on the plan, timelines, budgets, the things we've all heard. On a product, the focus is on features, on scope. And then, if a project is successful, that's tracked. How many? Sorry, it's in the morning, right? So it's tracked by project variance, but that means is how not far off are we from the initial plan, right? How closely we follow the initial plan. Whereas on a product characteristic, it's tracked by business value. If we had to change course to make sure that we have value on a business level, that's welcomed. So it's really important when we are working on a project, because everybody calls them projects, to understand what type of organization we have in front of us. What is the client thinking? Are they in a project mindset or are they in the product mindset? Because that influences a lot how we should approach the work in a way. Because it influences the people we work with, how their bosses are approaching them, right? So very quick, I've written this so you can have access to the slides later on, right? So, but very quickly, you can going through this list, you can tell whether you are in a project mindset or in a product mindset organization, right? Whether you have product owners who are organizing product roadmaps, and you know what is the roadmap that's coming in terms of functionality. Whether you allocate the resources in teams that are tasked with creating functionalities and not necessarily meeting tasks. When you have teams that they're working together, you have architects, developers, designers together creating something that is, and client teams as well, creating. And essentially, it comes down to business outcomes. Is the client requesting an outcome, or are they requesting a particular task? And do you know, as people working on the project, do we know what the impact whatever we deliver has to the client? So just to make some expectation management here, if going through that list, you find yourself not working in a product mindset organization, then don't adopt any of the agile stuff. It won't work, because they have a very different expectation from us. And what it would do if we adopt, you know, an agile way of reporting or an agile way of talking about scope and doing estimates or whatever, is that they will turn our clients off. So we need to have a facade, right? The way we work may not be necessarily the way they want the progress of the project being reported on, or how they want their budget being reported on, or understanding what percentage of the scope we have done, right? So the client would expect to know which resources will deliver which part of the project, when and how and for how long, and that's how they will track the project. So us going and tell them, you know, we're working in an agile way and we do things differently around here, they will only turn them off. So, and sometimes you find yourself working with product-centric clients. They want to adopt product centricity, they want to adopt agile practices on delivering the work, right? They want to adopt agile way of budgeting their work. But it's no denying that, you know, these guys, they need to ask for that budget internally. So they still need to know, you know, how much something would cost, like a rough estimate or some kind of indication what it takes, you know. They need to ask their CEO for that money. And this is because essentially we are in the selling game. We are selling our services, right? So someone needs to budget for that and then give us that money to get something in return. And I have this slide here just to let you, just to align everybody as to what the B2B purchase journey is. And it goes through different stages. And what latest research shows is that those stages are not linear. So essentially, what everybody wants to do is create some sort of specification, then select a vendor, and that vendor successfully deliver the functionality, right? But what you may have also seen from experience, sometimes when you are in the selling process, in pre-sale process, as we call it, with the client, things change, you know? Suddenly you're discussing about a platform, a multi-site platform with 10 websites, and then suddenly someone says, okay, can that platform be decoupled, for instance? This is a huge change from a solutions architecture perspective, right? How on earth did this come up now? You know, in the middle of the negotiation, right? And what does that mean for our budget? That we've said like a couple of weeks ago that it's going to be X. You know, do we go back and say that's 2X now because you want this change? And this is because the website is not linear. And you see, I have noted there with red all of the things that are going on during a purchase journey for a client that they can alter the scope or the budget. So in any time during problem identification, solution exploration, benchmarking, and selection of vendor, you can have all of these things that they can influence what the project is, what the project should do, what's the available budget for this project, and who is involved with that project. So that's precisely why we have all those problems in our everyday life where we have to constantly readjust and adopt and adopt a different mindset as to coming with discussing it with the client. So as a recap of this section, the relevance and context section, sometimes many engagements are not product-centric, right? So they need to know who, what, when, and how, and for how long, and for how much. And even if they do try to be product-centric, they essentially also need budgeting purposes internally. So they still need to somehow understand what to do. It's a very easy way to calculate through the team, right? But if you think about it, as a solutions architect or as a technical lead, you also make an estimate to understand what type of team you need to deliver a scope. So you do that in your mind anyway, right? So what are those rules? And before we get into the rules, essentially we're hanging, right? We need to do some kind of estimate. We need to be internalizing and operationalizing all of what I said from context into getting. And the thing is, at that point, early start in the project, it's when we have the most uncertainty and the least amount of information of what the project would bring, right? So let's see how we can manage that risk and uncertainty, how we can give ourselves room to breathe later on while we are in the project, but also give the indications, like indications to our clients. They can get what they want, which is understanding what budgeting they need, timing-wise also, not just from a monetary perspective. So, again, I'm going to start with a question. Poseidon was the god of sea, right? So what does Poseidon, submarines, and managing risk and uncertainty have in common? And it's not the Odysseus from previous section, right? So meet the United States Navy Special Projects Office, right? So these guys, in 1957, they developed a method to simplify the planning and scheduling of large and complex projects. And the method was called PERT, which is Program Evaluation and Review Technique, right? So building submarines is quite complex, right? And what is PERT? PERT is a method for analyzing tasks involved in completing a given project, especially and the time that is needed to complete. So that's a very good similarity, what we have with software projects so far, right? It incorporates the uncertainty by making it possible to schedule a project without knowing the precise details at any given point. It's an event-oriented technique, so it expects sometimes things to change as you discover new information. And it is used more in projects when time is the major factor rather than cost. But in software projects, we know that cost is a factor of time, right? So time times rates equals project budget, right? Plus margin. And it is often applied on large-scale, one-time complex, non-routine infrastructures and on research and development projects. That's straight from the manual, right? That's from 1957. I found it fascinating that even in 1957, they were talking about research and development projects in those terms. Because essentially, that's what we do as well from a software perspective. So what's the theory and what's the application around this technique? You need to estimate three things. You need to estimate an optimistic time, which is the minimum possible time a task will take, given everything, there's no risk or no uncertainty. Everything proceeds as normal. Then you estimate a pessimistic time. That's that's the maximum amount that it's gonna take for something to be executed if everything goes wrong. We're not talking about major catastrophes here. But if you have a risk, if you need to estimate a login functionality and you don't know if they have SSO or not, the optimistic is, the Drupal default functionality is estimated 3 hours. The other one is that we may need to implement this integrated with Azure AD, right? So it's a couple of days worth of work. So that's the difference in the estimation. And then you have the most likely time. The most likely time is given specific estimator, so the person who's doing the estimate, on their experience, what is likely that project is going to take. So if we are talking about an enterprise level client, and continue with the login example, most likely they have SSO, right? So that's not going to be a couple of hours worth of work. It's going to be closer to a day, day and a half. And then the project, I'll show you in a minute what it does, but you calculate a set of probabilistic theory measures, like the expected time, standard error, and the confidence interval, and then you use that, because that essentially is creating a distribution of the probability of containing the risk and the uncertainty of this estimate. So you can use that to then quantify that risk and uncertainty and calculate from that timing intervals. This is umami. Basically, if I was to estimate umami, to create like a website with a homepage, a recipe listing page, a recipe content type, an article view, an article page, and then the sidebar with a header and a footer, you know? That's what it would take. Well, not realistic numbers, I guess, you know? It would take a little bit longer in Drupal nowadays, but that's what it used to be. So you see you have the estimated, the optimistic, pessimistic, and best columns. That's what the estimator would need to input into a spreadsheet. And then you have the calculated expected time, standard error, and standard deviation. And from that, you calculate, it's not those measures, standard deviation and standard error, are project level. You calculate them on a role level, but essentially what it comes down to is this. You need measures for the whole project. So in this particular project, you have 97.8 estimated time and 3.6 standard error. And you use those two measures to calculate what is then called the confidence interval. And confidence, you see, there are different degrees of confidence and a range, a lower and an upper range that the project would fall within. And what that says is there's what is on the red box. There's 95% chance this project will fall between 91 and 105 hours. You can be even more liberal with getting like the 99.7 confidence interval, and you see this range extends, right? So you have the 88 hour, it's gonna be 99% sure that it's gonna fall between 88 hours and 109 hours. And that can give you a range if you're talking in a product-centric organization and you need to give them a budget indication. But also it can give you like an upper bound if you're talking on a fixed project, right? You can, if someone wants just one price for a project, you can take those 109 hours. You know there's wiggle room that you have left in that. And you can use that to calculate the budget that you set to the client. Obviously, you know, reality is not as simple as this. Internally, at Zakala, we have taken this concept on a domain basis. So we have our UX designers, our front-end teams, back-end teams, DevOps teams, SEO teams, everybody who's contributing to the project, they're contributing their own estimates on their own tasks. So essentially, we use that to do it. Our spreadsheet is a little bit cleverer than that as well. So we are tracking it by epic, if you like, also. So we're grouping stories together. So we can quantify, you see, the risk on a per epic basis, and we can understand, you know, in a project scope, as we are discussing this with the client, we know that a few things are pretty clear, straightforward, and there might be a few epics or business capabilities that are very risky. We can use that knowledge even at the pre-sales to have a discussion with the client, and essentially be able to say, you know, what can we do to de-risk this? Do we have to de-scope this? Are you not ready actually to have this functionality? Is it something that we are missing, information around this? is this something that we need to look into more during the discovery phase and reassess, what it's going to take to build this, right? So even from a pre-sales perspective, if you start adopting this mindset where risk and uncertainty is inherent in a project and you need to somehow surface it to be able to measure it and talk about it, you're already getting the foundation of a better project when you get into the implementation phase. And just to show you, we use this in very complex projects, projects that they are 10,000 hours, almost millions of dollars in budget, and it helps us with understanding this uncertainty and quantifying it and discussing with a client and being upfront about it. So I know that's a lot of math. Let's take a breath and let's understand how we move on from here, right? So far, we've learned how to actually understand context within a given project. We got an approach as to how we can quantify the uncertainty and the risk at a given project. Also, we understand what is the importance of actually quantifying this and having it in our arsenal, discussing this with the clients. So let's see how we become agents of change the moment we step into a project and we want to help clients build better products, essentially. So how do you do that? How do you help a client move away from the project-centric mindset into a more product-centric mindset that simplifies our work, but simplifies their work as well? We need to understand how change comes up, right? And in big enterprises, the reality is that change comes top-down. If there isn't support from top management for any kind of adoption, don't bother. The middle layers won't take the responsibility and the accountability of driving change into an organization, right? And even if there is support, you still need to convince the people you work with about the validity of your opinions, because to them, it's your opinions up until that point, right? So that would only work if they know you have a personal connection, if they like working with you, and if they trust you, right? So what we need to be doing and how we are approaching this, if we want to be agents of change, is we need to work the account at an account level. We need to over-deliver and be super easy to work with. Otherwise, we won't be able to change anything. And every nice idea we have and we put forward is going to feel unrealistic to them. And let me take this moment just to explain a little bit further from my experience why I think product centricity is very hard for enterprises. There are three main reasons for this, and they are structural reasons within enterprises, right? So we are like salmons going upstream, and that's precisely why I know that when you have tried to implement some agile stuff in projects, you found, walls from clients. Rarely they were welcoming those changes, right? And why is that? So there's an organizational reason, right? So projects, they can be constructed one-off. An enterprise may have a short-term need. They set up a project, they set a budget, you go and do it. They have peace of mind that this is going to be taken care of. And the way that it's organized, the IT CIO might do that, an IT director might be able to do that, CMO or someone from marketing, they would like some new capabilities within their website. Have a project, do it. They don't necessarily have the bigger picture, what that means in terms of technical architecture, in terms of governance, in terms of compliance, right? They look at that at the second time. So you're pressured into this mindset. The second is financial. Drupal has been crossing over to the big enterprise, right? And the big enterprises are being audited by the big consultancy firms. They need to have their numbers reporting to different authorities. Believe it or not, working in a product mindset makes it super hard to calculate what is a capital expenditure, what is an operational expenditure. And that makes a big difference when you need to report your numbers to authorities. And finally, it's operational. Shifting from projects to products may blur reporting lines, may blur authority that people, accountability, responsibility people once had. You know, it sort of like shuffles the playing deck. And that's not a welcoming change for a lot of people. And there is an aside over there to understand budgeting. When companies set up their budgets aside, they do that usually in June, July for the next year. They need to know what type of money they are setting up. And believe it or not, they are not tying this with the functionality and the business capabilities. They have an IT budget or a marketing budget set aside, and every year they add X percentage to it. That's it, depending on the year. If they want to invest to more marketing or digital, they're going to increase 10% the marketing budget. That's it. So the things we are discussing are coming later on, right? And they're not necessarily the ones that they are being discussed when the budget is being set. So what can you do, right, in a changing environment, or if you want to instigate change? So I think there's 5 things you can do to have a chance on achieving that. One is consistency. Be able to be consistent on your delivery, on your interactions with the client, on everything that has to do with your project. Second is be collectively accountable, right? So responsibility is where responsibility is due. As we said, risk and uncertainty is inherent into projects, not our approach of delivery, right? A project can be uncertain because there's not enough information about specific functionality that has nothing to do with the vendor delivering this. In fact, we as a vendor, we need to surface that and say, you know, the uncertainty is there, and that's project level accountability, right? Scope. So to the client that we can provide all the skills and experience needed to manage the business capabilities and deliver the business capabilities that they are requesting with this particular software. Culture. Be able to work with the teams, right? Be able to create teams that stay independent from a specific project. Be able to change and add team members into a specific team when things change. So you can embrace change. You can bring expertise from different areas of your business into projects when this is required, because that's how you're going to be getting the accountability of a successful delivery of the project. And finally is the capability. So try to create self-managed teams. I know it's hard to do, but give people, you know, developers, DevOps people, designers, the ability to talk to clients, to get in front of clients and talk to them. Be client facing, because that's the only way the client would start trusting those people, but also that's the only way that you can start morphing the project when you are in delivery. So that's it from this. I'm just gonna really quickly recap what you need to take home from this presentation. One is understanding the context, product-based or project-based. What are you working with, essentially, so you can adopt the behaviors that are expected before then they trust you and you can become an agent of change if that's what you want. Understanding that vendor selection for a client is a major step. When you select the vendor for a project, that's it. You're married at least for a while, right? So that is is a very serious decision for them, and that's exhausting for us as well. I mean, in big projects, vendor selection process may be going on for months and months and months. So that's pay attention to it. Be able to surface the risk and the uncertainties at the project level during that time is really, really important, because it increases the trust that a client places on us. Again, understand the influence of the client. You need to get involved in previous steps and their B2B purchase journey. That's almost impossible to do, right? So you need to do it afterwards. And if you want to do it afterwards, what happens then is you need to build up the trust and authority with the client. And the best way to build trust is over delivering. That's it. So we are Jacala. We are in booth 1. So please feel free to come by and say hi. Feel free also to reach out on me on LinkedIn. And thank you very much. And we have some time for questions as well. Can you walk over to the microphone or just get the microphone? Thanks. So it's for the recording afterwards.
Hello. On your first page with estimates, you had estimates based on tasks.
Yeah.
And on the second one, you had epics and development phases. So how do you determine how deep you go? For example, one could
user story level. An epic is just the description. You go into the user story level. And actually, it's good practice to, as you're thinking about the pessimistic, right? Essentially, what you're thinking is about what assumptions you're making, what risks may come up, right? Just capture them on your spreadsheet. That will help you a lot later.
Yeah, I would add, so one could go even deeper. For example, estimate times for each task and break it down to actual developers, people who work on the task. And let's say assign time estimates to each person, for example, front-end developer, back-end developer per task. So it would need some more time in budgeting and estimates, etc. So how deep you go to make estimates?
I go at the user story level, because what you're saying is going to very quickly spiral out of control, and you're going to be paralyzing yourself by trying to create a very specific estimate, when in fact this is the other way around. You need to actually understand what the uncertainty is coming through the tasks, because precisely at this point you don't have, this is during pre-sales, right? You can't really know all the information to go and assign people to specific. That's going to come later. When you go through discovery, you have technical specification document, you build up your understanding.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And after, for example, the specifics, do you usually make such estimates based on, let's say, developer time?
The way we are working with Jacala is that once a team is being assigned, the delivery team is being assigned on the project, they get hold of the budget, and they are re-estimating based on the new information we have. So that's when, that's when it comes to the show whether we have enough estimated during pre-sales to deliver the project or not. And that's why we need to manage the uncertainty and the risk, to give our people who are going to be delivering this enough wiggle room to adjust on the things that they will discover inherently as they're going through doing the project.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. I just wondered what goes into the actual contractual decisions that go to the client. Like you've determined all this for yourselves internally.
No.
This is what we think.
This is a spreadsheet, right? So it's column A, B, C, and D. So A, B, C, and D will make it into the statement of work.
Into this. Okay. Yep. Yeah. So those are the promises. It's not just like we will do our best to deliver on your ultimate goals.
It's specifically those user stories grouped on those epics, with these individual assumptions and risks each.
And then with the stuff that you're really, really unsure about, things that you haven't done before, integrations, is that where you just say, we're going to do a discovery phase, we'll spend some time figuring this out and then give you a more precise estimate later?
So I'll answer this in two ways. First of all, what happens in Jacala right now, and what I would do if I haven't had Jacala behind me, right? So in Jacala, we're 3,500 people. It's rarely I can't find someone to discuss something, right? But there's been situations where we might have competing solutions for something we don't really know, or the technology had shifted, you know. Drupal allows new stuff and we don't really know which is the best approach on new stuff's coming in. What I would do then is discuss it with the client and I'll use this view, basically, where it quantifies the risk and say, this epic. It's really, it comes out from the estimate that it's really risky. The reason for this is X. We would know why it's risky because we are putting the numbers in, right? So can we have a discussion around this? Is it information we are missing? Is it something that you're not ready because you don't have enough yet and you'd like to take your time to actually understand this? Would you like us to help you with that through a discovery phase? You know, essentially, we have also something that's called the key technical decision-making process, which is a structured way to help clients with our help understand, you know, what their key technical decisions, you know, like strategic level decisions that alter their technical architecture. So we can run workshops with them and help them understand what and how a specific epic why there's risk and what they can do to mitigate it. By the way, the key technical decision process was my talk last year in Lille. You can find it online and see what we do with them. All right. Thanks very much.